Hi, everybody. Today is Wednesday, June the 24th of 2020, and welcome to another episode of Rudy's Psychic Meetup with Samantha Jane. Hi, Rudy. How's it going?
Hey, everyone's doing great. How about yourself?
Oh, it's been a super busy week. So I am the psychic medium here for those who don't know, and Rudy works with me every 2 weeks with Rudy's Psychic Meetup and puts together these awesome topics. And people post those questions, many of them, most of them woo woo. And I think that we should get started because you've got some pretty interesting topics tonight, Rudy.
Yeah, and what's funny is as I was preparing for the show, I really hadn't had a whole lot of time these last couple of weeks. Work has been very busy, and I thought, well, I'll just be inspired. And what came to top of mind here are topics that you actually were getting some information about. So I'm excited to see. It's always interesting how these topics will converge like that, but we'll get your take on it. So the first one I want to start off with is a review of one of Edgar Cayce's predictions. So Edgar Cayce was a famous psychic medium, and I just kind of found a website that went through a list of some of his main ones. And one of the ones that caught my eye, and I thought I would include tonight, was the discussion of a new root race. And that struck me as odd. I'm like, what does he mean by a root race? And really, this term is something where you almost get a shift in the gene pool in the human family where, people have evolved to something where they are so very different from their parents or grandparents. It's almost like a level up in the human species. And so, if our DNA changes over time and we evolve, this would be kind of one of those nexus points. And so Edgar Cayce did describe that the next great evolution would be tied to this, what he termed a fifth root race, which they determined around, would probably be sometime between 2000, 2015, that time frame. So Sam, I wanted to get your thoughts on this root race and what it is and the information that you may have gotten about it, and just in terms of how it aligns with like the Great Awakening and then the time period that we're in now.
Well, first of all, let me say that for somebody who was not involved in the woo-woo world whatsoever up until very recently, I learned so much from you guys. And that information from Edgar Cayce and the root race, I was not aware of. I'm aware of Edgar Cayce. Obviously, I refer to myself as Edgar Cayce without the nap. And I just do that because a lot of people talk about how he used to go into a trance to get the information that he would get. But I am just awake and talking to you guys like I am now, and I get the same type of information that he would get. So I had watched a few videos about Edgar Cayce, but with all of you guys helping out and asking questions and posting things like that, I'm learning so much. And just before I opened your email, I had come back from walking the dog. And one of the things I was thinking about was the fact that my great grandmother was a very powerful medium to the point that, like me, when she had trouble hiding her abilities, your knowings. And she only had, to my knowledge, out of hundreds of descendants, because she was my great grandmother. So she has a granddaughter who has gifts like I do, and only myself. This is all that I'm aware of out of all of these descendants. But both of my children have gifts. In fact, my son still sees dead people. He was not been able to erase that. Actually, he was telling me today what he was seeing. And he described something that I saw when I was little about his age. And I had to tell him what it was.
And both your children have this, right?
Well, my daughter is more like me because I turned off seeing things. So I don't see things that often. I won't say that I never see ghosts, but because it's very difficult to live in both worlds like that. I mean, it does freak you out when you come around the corner, or no, when you wake up in the morning. This is the last thing that happened to me. And you see a ghost and they're laughing at you because they know you can see them. And I'm just like, yeah, that's against the rules. You're not to do that anymore. That's how you handle it. But Edgar Cayce was right. And isn't it interesting that time frame that you mentioned, I'm only hearing about it now.
Right.
2000 to 2015, both of my children were born during that time. They're 7 years apart, but that they were both in that time frame.
And what are the odds that two children, I mean, we've talked about this before, but the two children from a parent are both going to have abilities and be able to manifest those? That's pretty rare.
Yeah, and that's would fit with what Edgar Cayce was saying, and even more so the fact that it was just going into my brain. And this happens all of the time where I'm getting information and sometimes I think I'm half crazy and then I come back and I click on a message from somebody who's in the Discord room and they have a message for me. And it's the exact thing I was thinking about. And I was like, way to go, people on the other side, because just when I'm about to think that I'm like nutso, you know, they pull me out of the fire like that, right? So I'm like, yeah, okay, right on. We're back on track again. I'm not losing. I'm not cuckoo.
Yeah. So yeah, it sounds like we're in that time frame, and this came about, I guess, when Edgar Cayce was talking with he was having a reading or a session for a construction engineer, and they the expanding consciousness, and this was back in like the early 40s. And Casey's comment was each individual had to essentially work with personal soul development in order to resonate that new consciousness. And what he said was, you expect a new root race. What are you doing to prepare for it? You must prepare food for their bodies as well as their minds and their spiritual development. And it sounds like that's really kind of where we're at right now. There is so much more material available to just educate yourself on things that are psychic, supernatural, and understand your abilities than think about it when you were growing up.
Well, just think about what we're doing here, where we're going to upload this podcast and it'll be information that people can access for free and get information about the woo woo and maybe start putting some things together because maybe they have abilities themselves, maybe their child does. And I'm seeing more and more of this. In fact, I was telling my friend today that I would say that there's a good like 30% of people that are in our crew here on the Discord channel that I talk to who do have abilities. And there's some people who have very strong abilities or their kids do. So they're involved because they want to be able to help their children. And I think that that's what Edgar Cayce was talking about, that, you have to be ready to feed these people. And now we're in a day and age where somebody like myself who has the ability to get the information directly from the people on the other side. I mean, I had no idea what crop circles were all about. But you know what? And you'll see in some of the earlier ones, like I'm literally looking away and I'm thinking I don't know the answer. And then it pops in my head. And then somebody sends me a link from somebody I've never heard of before who, died back in 1996. But here's this posting where he said the same thing as you.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just, confirmation because this is not information I would have ever found on my own. And anybody training to be a medium will tell you that 90% of it is confirmation. When you go on a diet and like 90% of it is the food you take in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the
And it's
same with medium training.
and it's great the place that we have here, and I think even before Discord, how difficult it would have been just to have a place for people to come together, share ideas and thoughts. And it's just very normal what we share within on the Discord and even some of the voice chats we get together. And it's nice to have this place where we can talk about our experiences, our skills, and put them in this context where your family member or friends might think you're crazy to talk about some of these topics. So it's really great that we have this.
Yeah. And that's probably one of the things I think that most people who have some abilities like this have a difficult time talking to family about it because, they may not believe in this kind of stuff. So you're going through the hurdle of trying to convince them that there is something beyond us. Whereas the people who are here hanging out with me already know that there is. And even if they don't have any psychic abilities themselves, they're definitely willing to participate in the experiment of training a psychic medium. And I have to say, the last year, and it hasn't even been a year and a half yet, but we're coming up on a year and a half. And I would say that, well, I mean, what would you say my abilities have gone from since you first met me?
Oh yeah, it's crazy just to watch where you were kind of, getting your footing in the beginning, and versus now how you're able just to kind of get stuff so much more quickly than before. Because yeah, I think before you could tell you're thinking about it, and now it just seems to really flow naturally.
And I think to myself, how many people, it takes them 10 or 15 years to develop to this point just because they didn't live in a time when you can set up a format like this and get that type of confirmation from people that gives you more confidence. And if you have a bunch of friends like that you don't know well enough to have your mind interfering with what could potentially be their future, that's the problem you run into with friends and family a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't know their history. Yeah, that's a good point. So, Sam, to close out the Edgar Cayce topic, do you think that what he was saying with the new root race, is really where we're at now, where it converges with that great awakening that we're seeing, that period that we're in? Is that kind of what maybe he was seeing and just termed it in terms of the evolution of the people?
Yeah, I believe that I'm one of the people as a medium who's stepping forward to train the people who are, leveling up as a result of the Great Awakening or who have been born in that time frame. I mean, oh my gosh, the poor parents of these children. I mean, at least I was able to tell my son that he wasn't crazy. And I was able to tell him what the different things were, how we make them go away, these sorts of things. These things are important because it can be very frightening to have these gifts as a child.
On that, the next topic we'll go to, we got time for another one. Let's go in to talk about the armor of God. And this biblical reference has come up quite a bit in QAnon posts. So if anybody follows QAnon, and he has posted this Bible verse several times. And it would make me think about two things based on some of our other conversation. As one, what armor are they talking about? Because you've described armor in the war in heaven. And then also, why is Q using this particular passage? So I will start with some context, because I hate this when we have Bible quotes and we don't understand kind of what they are and what they're saying and why they say it. So this is from the New Testament, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 to 17. And Ephesus was a port city town in western Turkey. And Paul's letter was to the Christians in Ephesus around 60 AD. And at this time, Paul was in prison, I believe. So some suspect it may have been written by Paul's disciples. But it's kind of a formal letter that covers the mission of the church, what it means to be Christian and the challenges. And, kind of challenges the Ephesians to walk the walk and really be strong in their faith. And I'll just read two verses here about the armor of God. There's quite a bit, but he says, "Put on the armor of God so that you may be able to stand firm against the tactics of the devil. For our struggle is not with flesh and blood, but with the principalities, with the powers, with the world of rulers of this present darkness, with the evil spirits in the heavens." And it goes on. So, Sam, when you hear that, what do you think is meant in terms of the armor of God?
Well, you can't walk on the side of evil and then proclaim that you are good. So, if you are going to do right by yourself and the world, you have to make the right choices as well. You can't justify, evil actions with circumstances and say that, oh yeah, but I'm still going to get my reward when I cross over to the other side. It's like, no, you're here to learn lessons and to be better from where you started. So,
Yeah. It really seemed to me, yeah, like that kind of a mental state is that, be prepared for the attacks like we talk about and put yourself in that right mindset. And then you're prepared for the onslaught and the attacks. Because we've talked about the different kinds of attacks, whether it's somebody screaming at you at the grocery store because they don't like
yeah.
your vibe, or all that kind of weird stuff that happens, right?
Yeah, and actually, and during the COVID-19, because people were under so much pressure than they normally would be, you certainly got a lot more people acting up and acting out as well. And you know what? Everybody has times where they're not their best person. But as long as you recognize that, do something about it. And I'd also want to mention too, for anybody who's new, this isn't a religious channel at all. We would review Hindu teachings and Buddhist writings as quickly as biblical. But of course, being part of North American culture, I was personally brought up Roman Catholic. And Rudy, I don't think if you mentioned if you were brought up with.
Yeah, was brought up Catholic as well. Yep.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that about. See, we don't discuss religion normally because it really doesn't matter what people's beliefs are. But we will. I just consider myself spiritual. As a medium, it's not possible to not believe in God and Source.
Mhm.
That this is where I get my information from is over there. So how can it not exist? And
Right.
the wonderful part about having these abilities is that it just again gives credence and proof in our realm that there is something much bigger out there than what anybody really truly understands and knows about. I mean, I don't know everything, but you guys asked some really great questions. And, the people on the other side have seen fit to drop the answers into my brain. And I'm very excited when I get confirmations from people about hearing these things before, because I'm sure that when I say things, that it's not the first time that it's been said somewhere at some time. It's just that I don't know about it. And it's a great confirmation that this is the right answer, because in the same way, where I worked in financial services for over 30 years, and as Rudy mentioned earlier, I've really divided up the shows that we do on Patreon, where one is like cryptos, this one's, woo woo, and there's Ask a Medium. But even on like the live streams, a lot of people will ask me questions about financials,
Yeah.
and that is the background that I come from. So I don't really know anything about all of this stuff that many of you have been reading about and sort of, swimming in that pool for 40 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. And me, I'm like maybe 2 years tops. Most of it's been cryptos. I've just been obsessed about cryptocurrencies and learning as much as possible about them so that I can help direct others so that they don't get burned. It's nothing better than, learning from a fellow, no longer newbie. Right.
Well,
So,
that's why it's nice to have a medium in our pocket, right? So we can just ask about anything and get the real scoop.
oh, absolutely. But it's
um,
certainly helpful. Yeah, go ahead, Rudy.
Yeah. So with the armor of God, and the reason this came up in my mind is because you've also mentioned before where you've talked about the war in heaven, and you've even mentioned having that being shown to you, kind of what went on with the war in heaven. And I'm wondering why the armor, the like you hear the term, whether it's in the Bible, described with swords and armor. Why do we get that language, and why do you see that as like? Yeah, I think someone even mentioned seeing you in like a suit of armor. Is that more kind of a metaphysical way for us to understand the type of battle that's going on, as opposed to you really suiting up with a sword, and in armor and in heaven and the angels physically fighting in that realm? Is it really for the imagery?
Yeah, it is, because our human mind um, only understands certain things.
Okay.
So it has to be shown to you, just like in the same way that I see pictures. And that's why, the rule in Ask a Medium, for example, when we do that show, is that the person has to be in the chat room so I can do a little bit of back and forth with them to make sure that the pictures that I'm seeing are suiting, what belongs to them. Like, oh, do you have two sisters and a brother? Are they around this age? Do they just live down the street from you? It's stuff like that, right? This
Yeah.
crazy stuff that I see that I can get confirmation on. Um,
Yeah, no, that's helpful because it makes you think like, are they really fighting? Like, come on, they would be in that realm as they're going to create their own horses and all that kind of stuff. So really, and that makes a lot of sense when you put it in terms of the armor and the battle. That kind of helps us resonate here on Earth with what's actually happening.
yeah. And I believe the imagery was shown to me when they were showing me this stuff because they're communicating with me in my human mind.
Okay.
Right. So they're
Yeah.
showing me something that the way that I'm going to understand it. And then when I'm like, well, that's really kind of crazy if I was involved with that. Oh, that's just ideas of grandeur. And then I like literally get back from the walk. get a glass of water, click on the Discord channel, and it's an actual personal message to me because she didn't even post it in the Discord channel for everybody else to see because it was so crazy. And I was like, and literally my jaw was hanging down. Like,
Saying they saw you in armor and with a big sword, right?
they asked me, they said, in a previous life, were you a warrior? And I was like, well, I guess you could say it was a previous life, but it wasn't here. But they said that I was, and it was probably the same picture that was shown to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that didn't look like an Earth Realm scene, though.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, then the other question, one that when I see this in the QAnon post, is why would this be being used by Q? And two thoughts came to mind. One is that within North America, as you mentioned, largely have a Christian population, so any Bible passage like that would resonate with them and make sense. And maybe that's the silent majority that they're trying to go after. But also, it really seems when we kind of read through it, but describes what we're seeing now as this battle for control, this fight of the rule of law versus people trying to use the system for their own gain. You can kind of see a lot of parallels with this. So it really struck me on a couple of levels that, so I'm just wondering if that's a particular reason why Q is using this passage.
Yeah, it's really a fight for the minds. And that's really very similar to what happened in heaven, is
Okay.
that it was more like deception that happened, because I mean, somebody must be pretty deceptive to actually make angels who are in the presence of God think that they can be on the winning side on the other side. It was rather ridiculous, actually. The
Okay.
whole build up to it and everything, very ridiculous. It was like, but it was like an example, and now it's playing out in the Earth realm. And we see
Yeah.
it in America and around the world, and how the minds, and it's almost like this big division. But the thing is that the evil never had a chance. And we're seeing that now, right? You're starting to see it. You're starting to see what all the stuff I was talking about before is all starting. And people are no longer afraid that the corrupt are not going to be put in jail, and things are going to change. We're just right now, I think, at the pinnacle of it before the roller coaster goes down. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's like this is the big fight. The deep state is in its death throes. And so you see this battle going on, and it's very similar to what would be described in the Bible. And I think somebody said that the Hindu writings also talked about a war in heaven.
Okay. Yeah, I want to explore some of those topics as well. I'm not a Bible scholar. I didn't really study the Bible, but when you kind of take some of these passages, it does parallel a lot of what's happening today. So it's fascinating from that aspect.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. I love the old writings and stuff. And I do believe that, even though I don't believe in any one religion in particular, I do believe that there are different facets and meanings in every single one that you can, all of the major ones of the world, you can take something.
Yeah.
From most of them.
Okay. All right. Well, we are at about just past 30 minutes. So let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A. We got about 23 questions, and let's see what people have for us tonight.
All
The
right.
first one comes from David Jones. Hi, Sam and Rudy. Sam, when you are doing readings, the family members or so who come through, did they cross over to the other side, or somehow are they trapped in limbo? If they did cross over, are they not reincarnated? How is a soul reincarnated but yet still communicates with you in this realm? Thanks.
I have mentioned that there are certain souls I do not speak to, and those are the ones that are caught in between. So they haven't passed over yet. They're what's called earthbound spirits, and I do not speak to them. But I have to say that everybody that I've been doing a reading for, that they always had family members who had crossed over to the other side. Earthbound is not a common thing to have happen to people. They've all crossed over, and
then have they, would they be reincarnated, but would they, and then still be speaking to you, or are they speaking to you while they're waiting to be reincarnated, I guess?
Okay, so a part of us never leaves the other side, right? That's a part of us. And the other part of us is down here on the earth realm.
Okay.
living our life, doing our thing and stuff. So we can be in the two places at once. And I know that's really hard to understand. I don't really understand it myself. It came up actually with a conversation with another medium. He's not a practicing medium, he just has abilities, right? And he said, yeah, he goes, when this is all over with, we'll be kicking back on the other side, having a beer together. And I said, oh, we're already over there now.
That's
Having a
right.
beer. We're already
Well,
there now.
and you've mentioned a lot of the times the people that come through on the other side are family members that we've maybe had a relationship with here on Earth, or maybe just one generation past. It's usually people who kind of have an interest in you and watching over you for the most part. And there's
Yes.
always exceptions, but it's generally close family.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that the timeline for reincarnation is normally about 70 years. So there's no time on the other side, but there is time in this realm. But there are certain exceptions granted
Okay.
where, you have heard stories about, children who've passed away and then they've been reincarnated in to the new children that were born to the family.
All right. William Penn writes, was Jesus's birth truly a virgin birth and miraculous, or was there embellishments on the part of the writers?
Well, I think that the writers, actually believed that. And also because of the times, it was necessary to include that in his birth,
Okay.
just because of the times. Because remember, today, people don't look down their nose at a child who was born without a father in the home. But even, 50 years ago, people were looked down upon. So can you imagine what it would have been like back in Jesus' time?
Yeah, you'd be pretty much shut out. That would be horrible. Well, and the whole thing of the virgin birth and that motif, I think recurs throughout history as well. I think there's a movie, YouTube show, uh, Cayce, and it kind of goes over like the history of all the different. You go back to Egypt and a lot of the different gods and things, and they kind of recant a similar story. So the fact that something like that might be reused if someone had heard it would not be a surprise either. So
Oh yeah, and I mean, and it certainly doesn't negate, all of the writings just because there's a few things in there that are based on the time. I mean, you read the stuff that they say about gay people in the
mhm.
Bible, and I mean, that was just something that was based on the times as well.
Yeah,
So you can go through a lot of different things word for word, for
yeah.
sure. And I just have my opinion as a medium, what my understanding is, and I'm happy to share it.
So then Ani writes, continues to write, uh, how smoothly we transition to the new depends on how much we allow ourselves to imagine a new reality and let go of the past baggage. And I imagine the new babies will hold the new template for humanity as a whole. The more in depth in inner space, the less humanity can be programmed.
Well, that would be if they have second sight or gifts,
Okay.
which include reading minds, like knowing what somebody is all about as soon as they walk in the room, pretty much. It's really difficult to fool those people. And I do agree that that is the new root race, is that you're going to be dealing with people who are far more advanced in their abilities to like just literally read your mind. I mean, you won't be able to get one over on them. And even stuff like, I mean, I'll use a negative example. There was a man who walked past my house at 2:30 in the morning when I turned into my driveway.
Mhm.
And he looked over his shoulder and he made eye contact with me. And I immediately knew what he was going to do. I knew he was going to turn around, come back, and go down my driveway. So when I got to the back of my driveway, around the back of the house, I didn't get out of the car and I locked the doors. And so when he came out down the driveway, he was confused because I should have been out of my car with whatever I was carrying or trying to fiddle with my key in the back door with my back to him at that point. But nope, no blonde haired lady. And it was because I knew and I staked my life on it. I knew he was going to turn around. So instead, he became the hunted and I turned that car on and I turned that Jeep on and I chased him And I chased him with it up on the sidewalks, down the street, screaming out the window at him. He was running for his life. Well, anyways, I think that that was the first time in his life that he realized things could go really wrong for you. And there was no way for him to know that he just picked somebody who is a medium.
And a good confirmation for you too at that point, because you were a lot younger then, right? And it was you weren't quite sure.
27. I was
Okay.
27 when that happened, but I listen, that's another podcast, right? The crazy stories of my life and how many times I saved my life or the life of someone else because I could read minds, see the future, whatever. And then there comes a time where you just give it up and you decide that not everybody who's in the woo woo is crazy and that, you might as well take the jump for it. Because that's really what keeps people from getting involved in it. You think everybody's got a screw loose who's
Yeah.
involved in woo woo, right? Like it just because they get into like really crazy made up stuff that is made up, and you're like, oh yeah, I don't want to be involved in that. So then I meet all of you guys and realize that there's a whole bunch of people out there just who are normal, just like me.
Yeah, and that's the big thing about the woo-woo space is you can make something up crazy and kind of steer things off course, and then use that to discredit people. And so that's what's great about able to have you discern things and get those questions out there. All right, William Penn writes in her book, The Two Marys, Sylvie Brown suggests that Judas Iscariot was in on the plan to rescue Jesus from the grave, and that Judas did not kill himself. Any truth to this?
No.
Yeah, I think you said it was likely that Jesus was paid off by one of the wealthier disciples, and they got him out and rushed him off to eventually what's France now.
Is it? I think it's. Is it Joseph of Arimathea?
Joseph of Arimathea. Okay.
That was the one that came to mind for me as the rich Jewish man who followed him, and that he paid off the soldiers and had them take him down from the cross. And then a few days after, when he was healed enough, because the guy was close to death, right?
So Judas wasn't in on the plan to rescue then. All right.
No, he was the one who turned in Jesus for the silver
Yeah.
and stuff. That's all part of the story, but it is true. Like this is just sort of a documentation
Okay.
of what took place.
All right. Big Cat writes, Hi, Rudy and Sam. How did Source come into being? Was there anything before Source?
No, source was the beginning.
Yeah, that's another one of those things that's probably almost impossible for us to wrap our heads around, too.
Yeah, it's a little bit chicken and egg, isn't it?
Yeah, the whole concept of infinity is mind blowing. And
Mhm.
Barton Tom writes, years ago, my daughter and I were up on the Abiquiu Mesa coming out of the mountains, and that's in New Mexico, coming out of the mountains at night when we saw 1 to 6 UFOs about 600 to 1,200 feet away, some coming and going. We stopped the SUV and watched them. Then we took out night vision and also viewed them. With the night vision, the craft were bigger, and there were a stream of energy going down towards the ground in the center area of the UFOs. What were they doing? Were they also observing us, watching us as we watched them?
Oh yeah, well they would have been aware of you. They have the how you see the night vision, but literally a plane can fly over and pick up your body heat in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like what they have, but even more. They'll know whether or not you're a human, or animal, what your heart rate is. They know everything. Oh yeah, they're watching you watch them. And they have a limit to the number of people, but believe me, they are aware in, the phones, like how people have phones.
Yeah.
But really there's nothing we can do about it here on Earth anyways about it, because they're here, they don't bother us, and they leave as quickly as they came. They're not like setting up any towns here. So
When the audience gets to 20 or more, they bug out. Maybe that's their policy, right?
yeah.
What do you think that the energy was going down to the ground? Do you think that was something to do with propulsion, or do you think that was something else?
The light, they say they had a light beam going down to the ground?
He said he saw a stream of energy going down towards the ground in the center area of the UFOs. So coming like out of the center.
Well, usually they're collecting stuff. So doesn't have anything to do with propulsion. And the only reason I even know this is that I'm just asking the people on the other side for people who are new, saying, "What are you talking about, Samantha J?" It's like, I'm just asking the people on the outside. I've not seen a UFO myself in this realm, but I know they exist because I've asked the people on the other side and I've gotten information.
All right, Luciana writes, "Hi Sam, can you and the people on the other side explain to us what the Matrix is? Thank you."
Well, I think that a lot of people talk about the Matrix. I don't know anything about it myself. I've had a lot of different questions about the Matrix or ways that I've spoken about that it just has not rung true with me,
Yeah.
whereas other things people have said have rung true with me, right? So it just seems to be a mix of sort of hit and miss on information, and because I'm not well versed in it, I don't give instruction or ideas on it. But if someone breaks it down into little pieces and says, is this true? Like someone asked about the ley lines,
Yeah.
right? And I said, no, that is not what they think it is.
Well, and the Matrix is another one of those things that I think is, a theme through YouTube. You can find videos where people will claim we're living in a computer simulation and they make arguments as to why. But I think really the Matrix was a really good metaphor for our lives and how we choose to live, what information we choose to explore, look into. And I think that's why it resonates with people so many, or with people so much, is because we consider ourselves like we always use the word red pill. We've chose to come out of the matrix and look at the world from a different perspective rather than just participate blindly. So I think that's why it's probably such a common topic.
Mhm. Yeah. I know people talk about the world that we live in as being an illusion, but it's definitely not an illusion. The place we go to when we die from here is far more real than here because this was created by the other side. So, of course, the other side is more real, but that doesn't mean that what we do here for each other, that's very real.
Yeah.
The wall you touch, it's real, it's there. The road you're driving on, this is very real. So I don't know why people, I don't know. I just think maybe some people want to go on tour and sell some books.
Could be. All right. Nika writes, "Are star seeds, light workers, indigo, crystal, rainbow children just the new age label, or is there some truth behind them? Do they have spiritual gifts and purposes in this life?"
Well, I don't really have a name for, what my son and my daughter are. I'm just like, oh, it's in their DNA. They're going to have access to the ethos, and let's wait and see, how they're going to use these abilities that they have and how strong they are in different areas. And who knows? I mean, maybe my daughter, she will work in animation until she's 40 years old, and then maybe she'll become a full-time medium like her mother is. I don't know. I mean, she has the ability to. My son, I don't know exactly what he's going to do. I mean, maybe he's going to be a ghostbuster. He thought that was kind of cool.
Be cool. Well,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. The first person that talks about these tends to get to name them, and so you think about the indigo children. We heard this term a lot, and I think Dolores Cannon mentions it, and a lot of people, and if you consider it the new age realm, will kind of listen to each other and feed off of ideas, and if someone has a good name for something, that'll be used. But if you go back to maybe like Catholicism, I don't know that there's a good word for some of the stuff we're seeing, or you'd be labeled, I don't know, maybe sacrilegious if you try to claim you're a healer nowadays or something. So yeah, I guess I think they're all kind of pointing to this, just different words for the same thing. Lost Shaker writes, "Hi, Sam and Rudy. How do you distinguish between getting information from the people versus getting information from a person's mind by telepathy, especially when practicing with readings?"
There's a different feeling with it. It's almost like, okay, so people who've passed over, I don't even I don't even know their names a lot of times. Like you can tell me your dad's name who's passed over like 3 or 4 times, and I don't have to remember his name because he has almost like his own, when he comes in, like he's got his own fingerprint. in the spiritual realm. And so when I'm getting information from an individual who has their own fingerprint over in that realm, I know that information is flowing from that entity versus you who are here in this realm and what's coming from your mind. It's a different thing altogether, the feeling.
It's almost a different like energy signature, the same
Yeah.
way that, maybe your aunt who had a very loud voice and energy communicates differently than somebody with a very gentle voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. We all have our own signatures. And also, there's a different signature attached to the signature. So, you know how you have your own signature, but then it looks different based on the type of pen you used,
Yep.
right? Or you used a pencil.
Mhm.
Well, that has to do as well with whether the person is still here in this realm or they've passed over or they're earthbound.
Okay.
Because I recognize earthbound. Those are the ones I don't talk to. I just kind of go, oh, okay, you'll leave soon. You'll leave soon. Just because I just find I just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's, you know,
So a feeling that's really how you feel, or it's hard to quantify. I know what you're saying. All right, Big Bad Burly Bob writes, we haven't had a question from you in a while, so thanks, Big Bad Burly Bob. There are competing theories as to the demise of the dinosaurs, the comet asteroid disaster, or the release of all the lava gas from the tectonic events. Could you share any knowings about the truth of the cause of the mass extinction?
there were a couple of different situations that caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. So, of course, the asteroid that created the Yucatan Peninsula in the Gulf of Mexico, that was a really big factor. Killed a lot of them. Killed a lot of not just dinosaurs, but like everything on Earth. And then there was some volcanic eruptions at a completely different time. I don't know if that was earlier or later. But anyways, this all compiled in making it very difficult for any of these large, large animals to survive in Earth. Because when you think about it, I mean, they were huge and the world just could not sustain them. So when these um, things happened and they couldn't feed themselves, right?
Yeah.
They went into extinction pretty quick because you can just imagine the amount of calories these massive beasts would consume over a very short period of time.
So it's kind of a chain reaction of events that converged. Okay.
Right.
Boy George writes, "Hello, Sam and Rudy. I read a book from from Jane Roberts years ago. She claimed she is a medium and had contact to the other side via a person called Seth while she was meditating. All this happened in the 70s. I think you might even have heard of her, since she was quite well known. It was interesting to read at the beginning, but then became too complicated for me. Do you think all these messages from Seth are true? Thanks."
No.
Heard of that in the Seth and this entity. Yeah, it's always kind of, I don't know, to me a little bit creepy when you're getting an entity with a name like that. Uh,
I don't believe a lot of people who are doing that sort of stuff. You're either a medium or you're not. And I always say, test me. And I encourage anybody, if you've had anyone claim to be a psychic medium who is, asking you for money to do a reading, you should always be able to find examples of their ability. I mean, I had ready references because I did it for free with a couple of people and waited the length of time that, you need to wait for these things to come true as well. I mean, you can tell somebody about their past, which I did, very exact things. So that was a clue to me and it gave me the confidence. But until you can get confirmation back on a few things as well,
yeah,
you want to make sure that you're doing the translations correctly, because I think there's a lot of people out there who have the ability, but the biggest difference between how I can do it and how they do it is that I have a really significant gift in the translation.
yeah.
And I hope that from what I've learned to get me to that point, that I can help other people also get to that point quicker too.
Hi, Rudy and Sam. Thanks for the great venue. Is there a difference of having a dream right away in sleep or having a dream right before waking up? Thank you. Right away, like I'm thinking he's talking about the information you're getting if you have a dream right when you're starting to fall asleep versus waking up. That's really that in between time, I think, where you
Hmm.
said we kind of are most receptive.
Yeah, it's for me. I work in a little bit of a different way where it's like I wake up, and then the first thing I'm thinking about when I'm already awake is about something that actually it's information that I need, and I get a confirmation usually that morning or that day. I usually tell you guys about it. I think I have. There's been a few times that I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, and then this happened," and then the person who was involved with whatever it was that came to mind. So that's when normally I would get it. So if I had to choose between the two, I would say the ones that you get just before you wake up.
Yeah.
The
You tend to remember those quicker, more quickly too, or be able to write them down.
Yeah.
All right. Anthony writes, "Hi, Sam. I've had some dreams of my recently passed father, and there are vivid dreams like no other I've had. I'm aware of the situation. I touched his hand and felt them as if he was really there, and I freaked out in the dream. And in one dream, I woke from the dream, and I still felt he was holding my hand for a few seconds while I was woke. Is there any meaning behind this? Thanks for your time, Sam."
Well, there is a way that the other realm it's crosses over into our realm. Usually, when we're sleeping, that's when our vibrations hit kind of that level. Our mind can enter into that space, and it's like when you're waking up, you're almost like bringing it with you,
Yeah.
right? And then it realizes it's here in this realm. Oh, pull back, right?
And loved ones will come and you said this before, visit
Yeah.
you in your dreams and your sleep, and that's a genuine thing. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I had a dream about somebody I went to grade school with, and she had passed away a couple of years ago. And I think about her every now and then, and it's like, boom, there she was in my dream. It's like, oh, cool, she came to say hi. That's kind of a neat way to think about it.
Well,
Um,
that's another way that people can kind of discover that they have mediumistic abilities, because that was one of the things that happened to me before I started my channel quite a bit, was that people, like random people that maybe like a teacher from junior high, so that would have been when I was, 14 years old. Well, how old am I now? And how old do you think she is? Well, she'd be in her 70s or 80s.
yeah.
And me getting a random visit in, February of 2018 or 2017. And I bet you if met up with this other girl who was also on the cheerleading squad with me, and I bet you she kept in touch with this lady and knows when she passed away. Because I tried to Google it and everything, and I bet you it'll come up that it would be when I got that message. Because I was away on a trip, right? And I
Yeah.
was staying at my sister's place, and I like literally she visited me to say she was sorry for some things that she did that were really, really bad and would have showed up on her end of life review. And then she would have been like, wow, I better go say I'm sorry. And she can actually hear me. So I was like, yeah, don't worry about it. We all do dumb things.
Nika writes, "When you speak to the people on the other side, do you speak out loud or think to them? When people pray or ask the universe for things, is it more effective to speak out loud or in one's mind? Or are both ways effective? Can those in spirit read our thoughts?"
That's interesting. When I said to the lady who came to visit me to apologize, I said it in my mind, don't worry about it. Or we all make mistakes. Um, I mean, everybody was sleeping around me. I didn't want to wake anybody up. I say things out loud, just like when I speak in tongues, out loud, just because there's more power in the verbal.
And then our final question tonight comes from JP Still. It says, "Some people said that there was a large planetary like body next to the sun that we're not being told about. Any truth to this?"
There's a planet beyond the sun that we're not.
Yeah, it's like a large body, almost that's very near the sun, but we can't actually see it because of the sun's corona. And there's certain times of the day where you can look and you'll see like this large object near the sun. And again, another one of the things on YouTube, and there's some interesting videos about it that are compelling. And I forget what people are calling that, the dark star. Yeah, I think it's, but I don't know if it's some sort of optical illusion or some effect
Yeah,
of
I
light.
think that that's what it is. I
Okay.
don't think that there's another I don't think there's, like, a hidden planet.
Yeah, I think God, I want to say it's like that dark star, something that's going to come out of nowhere and cause a catastrophe.
Yeah, again, YouTube. And you have to remember as well that some people, they really do believe that this is true. And a lot of people who are looking into their mediumship or training in it, what have you, I do clearly talk to people about the fact that um, one of the top things that people think they are, if they're mentally ill, is they think they're a medium.
Yeah. Nibiru. Thanks, Rick Ray. Yeah, that's another word for it. Okay. All right. Well, Sam, that does it for tonight. As always, thank you for your time. And this has been enlightening and fascinating to hear about these thoughts on all these different various topics in the woo woo realm.
And for those people who are watching the first edit, and if you would like to have more information or see more Samantha, Jane, and Rudy, it's over on patreon.com/samjam. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Thanks, Sam. Bye, everyone.
Thanks everyone for hanging out.